Hello, my name is Max Feast, and I would like to welcome you to tonight's special episode of The Sound of Music. Tonight we'll be focusing on an important genre of music that was created during the 11th century, that is formerly known as classical music. Classical music was mainly written in the common practice period of 1550 to 1900. There is one area of classical music that differs from all other music, and that is the European style. One main reason is because of its use of staff notation, which has been used since the 16th century. The staff notation is used to describe exactly what type of note that a musician should play, rather than using methods such as improvisation. There was one man who was known as one of the best classical composers of his era. Because of his outstanding work, his name was Ludwig van Beethoven. Let's talk about where this great man started and how he became such a great composer that is remembered for his remarkable work even today. So please welcome our guest for tonight, Ludwig van Beethoven.
Hi, and thank you for having me on tonight.
May I ask, what have you been doing recently?
Nothing really other than decomposing.
Oh, that's very funny. So Beethoven, tell us about your childhood and your family history.
I was born on December 16th, 1770 in Germany. I descend from a long line of musicians, and my father Johann Beethoven, who was a tenor at the court of the Elector of Cologne, was a famous teacher of the beautiful art of music.
So who taught you how to compose music and play the piano?
My first music teacher was my father, and he was very harsh to me, because he wanted me to be the best I could possibly be. The only problem was he forced to play the piano non-stop, which led to me having mental breakdowns. I would even cry sometimes. But even though all this, it did make me who I am today.
Wow, I'm so sorry that he was so hard on you. It's like the saying though, no pain, no piano playing. Do you have any other hardships throughout your life?
My hearing began to worsen as I got older, but it all started when I was 26, and I believe the year was 1796. All the loud orchestras and music was hard on my hearing, and being in the center of all of it just made it worse. But by 1814, my hearing was gone.
How are you able to hear me right now? And how did you overcome this obstacle?
Hank gave me something called a hearing aid before I came here tonight, to allow me to hear again. For your other question, the hardest challenge of being a composer that cannot hear is that I must make the music in my head and then play it on the piano and would use the vibrations to my advantage.
Just astonishing. You are truly an outstanding composer. Could you tell me more about who else taught you and helped you throughout your life?
My father was very hard on me because of another man who had become very successful and knew of his earlier success of Leopold Mozart. My father wanted me to be a musical prodigy. I had many teachers, which included my father, Tobias Friedrich Pfeiffer, and my most inspirational teacher by far was Christian Gottlob Neff.
Tell me more about Christian Gottlieb Neff and how he was so inspirational to you.
Mr. Neff was a court organist who had taught me how to create compositions, and he had helped me write my first in 1783. I then began to work as an assistant organist for Mr. Neff, and soon after that he began giving me wages, and I was getting income from his job.
He seemed very important for helping you start your career as a musician and a composer. Where do you go from here? And do you write more music?
I wrote my first 3 sonatas in 1783 that were later on published. I named them Elector in dedication to the Elector Maximilian Frederick.
Tell us more about Elector Maximilian Frederick and why you dedicated this to him.
Frederick had a lot to encourage me in my musical studies, and his successor was Maximilian Franz, who thought ideas of enlightenment which greatly influenced me and my music.
That is very interesting. There was a man named Joseph Haydn, known as Papa. He helped a lot of people in the music industry. By chance, did you ever meet him?
Matter of fact, I was very close with Joseph Haydn. Mr. Haydn made arrangements for me to travel to Vienna and study with the father of the symphony, as they call him, in 1792. Soon after I arrived in Vienna, tragically, I had received the news of my father's death.
I'm sorry to hear that. How did you handle the death of your father?
It did not make much of an impact on me, but it led to me believing that I was the successor to Mozart. And I began to listen to many of Mozart's works, which led to my works resembling Mozart's works. When Joseph Haydn moved to England, the spotlight had moved onto me, and many of Vienna's aristocrats saw my musical ability, and they decided to support me financially.
So now, you have become the big man in Vienna. Did you continue to work in Vienna?
I was thinking about leave, but I decided to teach others the art of composing. In 1799, I began teaching the daughters of Anna Brunswick, and I fell in love with one of Mrs. Brunswick's daughters, Josephine. The only problem was that Josephine was married to another man, but God decided to help me even further, and all of a sudden, her husband died. My relationship with Josephine flourished after this, and we became very close.
Did you ever marry Josephine?
Sadly, no. I never got married throughout my entire life. I was engaged once, but it did not work out.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, that's quite all right.
Beethoven, is it true that you have prepared to give us a live demonstration of your famous works?
Yes, indeed I am. I will first perform a part of my very famous work, which is my Fifth Symphony. Then, if you would like, I can give you a few lessons that will help you compose if you ever so choose to be a composer later on in your life.
Well, thank you once again for being on the show. We thought you were wonderful, and you should come back and visit whenever you get the chance.
Everyone was great. Thanks for having me.
Next up, we have another guest from the classical period. His name is Karl, the great brother of Beethoven.
Hello everyone, and how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, but I wanted to ask you a few questions about your brother, Ludwig van Beethoven.
Oh, ask as many questions as you would like. I know everything about my brother.
Splendid. So, what happened shortly after he returned to Vienna?
Well, when he returned to Vienna, he began a period in his life known as the Middle Period, which is also known as his Heroic Period. At this juncture, Beethoven decided to change his artistic style because he wasn't very happy about the way he was previously writing his works. This new style was first introduced with Beethoven's Third Symphony. Many people believed it was a hit success, but others believed it was too lengthy and unbearable.
Can you give me an example of one of these people?
Yes, indeed, I can. He was known as the Harmonicon, and he stated that the Heroic Symphony contains too much to admire, but it is difficult to keep up admiration of this kind during 3 long quarters of an hour. It is infinitely too lengthy. If this symphony is not by some means abridged, it will soon fall to disuse. And before any of the other people in the audience speak up, I know what each and every one of you is thinking. This Harmonicon guy is a doofus, and I agree with all of you.
I agree as well. Beethoven actually just performed his Fifth Symphony for us, and it was magnificent. So, how long did the Heroic Period last?
It lasted until Beethoven finished writing his Eighth Symphony. At that point, Beethoven's hearing was almost non-existent. Beethoven was so paranoid about this hearing that when Napoleon invaded Vienna, he hid in his basement with pillows covering his ear because he was afraid of his hearing getting any worse.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But at some point, did Beethoven end up feeling better?
Yes, he did. About halfway through his decline, he began to feel better. But after a while, his sickness became worse. He started to drink a lot because of that, and he had lots of liver problems. His sickness became even worse when I died because of his tuberculosis. He became bedridden for the rest of his life, and eventually he died on March 26, 1827, during a thunderstorm.
That's a most unfortunate story. But where is his grave located?
His burial place is in Vienna.
Well, thanks, Carl. We loved having you on the show, and I wish that you rest in peace.
It was my pleasure, and thank you.
Well, we had a very interesting show tonight. We learned about the great Beethoven and his life as a composer. Before we go, I would like to present you guys with a few critics of Beethoven's work.
Many critics believe that Beethoven's works weren't very good. These people include Zeitung Welt, who said Beethoven's Second Symphony is a crass monster, a hideously withering wounded dragon that refuses to expire, and though bleeding in the finale, furiously beats about with its tail erect. He said this in 1804 in Vienna. Some critics didn't think Beethoven's work was good, not even a little. An example of this is Beethoven's always sounds to like the upsetting of bags of nails, with here and there and also dropped hammer. This quote was taken from John Ruskin's letter to John Brown, which was written in 1881. Even the people who praised Beethoven's work at one point turn around and criticize his work completely. An example of one of these people is the harmonicon, who said, "We found Beethoven's Ninth Symphony to be precisely 1 hour and 5 minutes long, a fearful period indeed, which puts the muscles and lungs of the band and the patience of the audience to a severe trial. The symphony we could not make out, and here, as well as in other parts, the want of intelligible design is too apparent." Allgemeine Zeitung described one of Beethoven's works as a daring wild fantasia of inordinate length and extreme difficulty of execution. The work seems to lose itself in utter confusion.
Well, we had learned a lot of information today, but there is one thing that you should remember from today. It is that Beethoven is one of the greatest composers of his era because his outstanding works such as his symphonies and his quartets. Thank you for joining us tonight on The Sound of Music.
No, I have an idea. Stop! I have an idea. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Love you. Bye.
Day 2 of survival. It's getting bad.
We are.